Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at one of two turf stakes on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. This one is Race 7, the Grade 3 Endeavour Stakes, going at 1 mile and a 16th on the grass course down at Tampa Bay for the fillies and mares. And we've got a field of 11 signed on. Actually, both of these turf stakes, which I'll be filming videos for that you can find on DRF's YouTube channel, drew really nice fields. And this one is pretty competitive. We have a slight morning line favorite in the form of the number 6 Market Segmentation, a lightly raced runner from the Chad Brown stable who will be attempting to make her stakes debut in this race. But there are many horses to consider, a lot of runners coming in with similar looking speed figures. So it is a race where trips could be a real important factor. And speaking of that, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race to see how these horses might shake themselves out towards the front end. And you do see that fast pace flag showing up in this race because there is a good amount of speed signed on. The number 11 Scottish Star is likely to be sent from her outside post position to get over towards the inside. She has definitely had success using an aggressive running style, but others like Beachfront Bid, especially Dakota Dancer, wants to be forwardly placed. Omi Soshi has shown some speed in her prior races, so it does feel like this race could heat up on the front end, and that would definitely help some of the closing types shown towards the left of the pace projector. One other feature in Timeform US that I want to highlight before we get to the main contenders is the finish projector, one of the new features that is debuted in Timeform US on your mobile device. If you go over to your DRF mobile PPs and tap on the Timeform US tab, you can access the finish projector, which shows the prediction of the finish of the race by the Timeform US algorithm, basically a visual representation of the power picks that you might be familiar with from the classic version of Timeform US PPs. And it does show the early leader on that pace projector, the number 11 Scottish Star, winning the race over the number 4 Olivia of the Desert. Both of those runners are coming in with some nice recent speed figures. So we'll see at the end of this preview if I agree with these Timeform US algorithm selections. And let's get into the main contenders. And we'll begin with those two horses that are shown first and second on the finish projector. With Scottish Star, let's take a look at her race 2 back when she was second in an allowance race at Keeneland. And personally, I didn't think she had a big excuse to lose this race. She went off as the 6-5 favorite, had a convincing lead coming to the mid-stretch marker. You see she's up by 2 lengths at this point, and she just gets run down by a horse that might have been a little better on the day, Sunny One, who's able to nail her on the wire here. She came back out of this race and was pretty disappointing. Went off as the 2-1 favorite last time out in the Suwannee River Stakes at Gulfstream Park. Did press a fast pace, but wasn't really able to go on. Actually, the horse that was leading her early, Bay Storm, hung in better than she did, finishing third, whereas Scottish Star faded to 6th at the end of that race. I'm not sure that stretching back out to the mile and the 16th is really going to do her any favors. And while she did earn a big speed figure for her U.S. turf debut back in that August race at Saratoga, a 118. I'm not sure that race has aged so well over time, so I might be looking to downgrade her form a little bit, and especially if this pace does heat up. She's one that I want to regard with a little bit of skepticism. Another horse that was shown pretty high up on that finish projector is the number 4, Olivia of the Desert. Let's take a look at her past performances in Timeform US, and kind of like with Scottish Star, she's coming in with 2 recent 110-plus Timeform US speed figures, and I thought she ran okay in both of those races. She spent much of her career with trainer Ken McPeak, switched into the Wayne Catalano barn last time and was able to grind out that victory, going the mile and the 16th distance at Fairgrounds. Not really sure about the competition she was facing that day. I do believe this is a tougher spot than that, and she's just not the kind of horse that I really trust to put those big races back to back, given that her prior form was maybe not quite up to that level. Let's take a look at the morning line favorite in this race, number 6, Market Segmentation, and we'll discuss her last race as we watch the replay. This was a pretty impressive performance as she was making just the 3rd start of her career down at Gulfstream in N1X allowance competition. You can see Irad Ortiz just has to shake the reins at her, and she quickly puts some distance between herself and the rest of this field. Anytime a horse wins by 3 or more lengths on the turf, that's a pretty dominant victory. So definitely a horse that seems ready for this step up into stakes competition competition. And I think that she was flattered too back when the horse that finished ahead of her, her stablemate Salima, was able to come back in her next start and win a stakes race. So market segmentation certainly has the form lines to suggest that she can handle this step up into grade 3 company. And the fact that Chad Brown is bypassing an N2X allowance race, which would be the conservative route, to try this more ambitious spot should be considered a positive sign for market segmentation. Let's take a look at a race that was run on a different surface, the Tapeta surface at Gulfstream Park. This is the Tropical Park Oaks, and we have a few horses coming out of here. You see highlighted in the Phipps silks towards the outside is Surprisingly, and just behind her in the yellow cap is Spirit and Glory. You can see Spirit and Glory kind of hanging in towards the stretch here. She's going to finish on the inside path, whereas Surprisingly stays out in the center of the course and runs after the leader Candylight to complete the exacta here. Surprisingly, is a horse that I think has run pretty well in her prior turf races. She obviously took a big step forward when she got on the turf last summer for trainer Shug McGahee. Couldn't quite handle tougher competition in the Virginia Oaks, but was off for a long time after that, so perhaps something didn't go quite right that day. I thought her return last time in that race we just watched was solid enough, and she is certainly one that has enough upside to potentially take a step forward in the return to turf here. But I'm actually a bit more interested in Spirit and Glory coming out of that Tropical Park Oaks. Like I pointed out, she was the one that was wide around the far turn and then crossed all the way over to the rail in the stretch of that race. Overall, watching the entirety of that Tropical Park Oaks, I just didn't think it was the right trip for Spirit and Glory. She was wide around both turns, got a bit too rank in the early stages, and that has been a problem for Spirit and Glory in a few of her prior starts. She tends to get a little bit keen, especially when the paces aren't that fast, so I'm hopeful that if the pace really does heat up on the front end, Spirit and Glory might be able to get into a more comfortable rhythm towards the back of the pack and deliver the kind of late run that we saw from her when she did win that Virginia Oaks back in September of last year at Colonial Downs. And it's also worth noting that race and her prior victory in the U.S. back in June at Belmont were both earned when she was running on Lasix, and this is the first time since then that she's getting to run on Lasix, since it is allowed in stakes races at Tampa Bay Downs. She's Gone is drawn towards the outside. She is a runner that is moving out of a grade 2 company. She last competed in the Miss Revere Stakes at Churchill Downs, put in a mild late rally that day while never really a threat. She ran okay in her prior start in the QE2, a grade 1 event at Keeneland, just not nearly as good as horses like Gina Romantica and McCulloch, who were first and second that day. She did earn a 1:15 time formula speed figure, which makes her competitive here, but I think it's more of a situation where she was carried along by superior competition rather than earning that figure for herself. So she needs to prove some things to me as she moves into this pretty competitive grade 3 event. One more horse that I want to talk about is a new face in this country. That is the number 3 Panama Red. Let's take a look at her last race when she ran at Killarney in Ireland. That is her just behind the eventual winner right now, moving to the outside, highlighted there in those red and black silks. And Panama Red, I like this performance. She stays on pretty gamely to finish second to the winner here. I saw similar attributes from her in her prior race at that same venue back in July when she really battled hard to try to hold on to that lead and just lost a head bob at the wire. Overall, her form is pretty solid over in Ireland. She was no match for tougher competition in the Group 1 Irish 1,000 Guineas 3-back, but otherwise, she's put forth nothing but good efforts. She's coming off a layoff here for trainer Arnaud Delacour, who has decent enough numbers with foreign shippers, and I think she's one that could fit pretty well here if she's able to deliver a top effort off the layoff in her 4-year-old debut. So let's take a look at my picks for this Endeavour Stakes. I do have that Euro shipper, the number 3 Panama Red, in the mix. She's my second selection in this race, and I also respect the morning line favorite, the number 6 Market Segmentation. I expect her to run well, just don't know if she's going to be much of a price. I did land on the number 8 Spirit and Glory as my top pick. Like I highlighted, she didn't have the best of trips in that Tropical Park Oaks, and I think getting back on Lasix in a race that features more pace could really work for this filly, and I do believe she has the potential to drift up from that 6-1 morning line. So it's the number 8 Spirit and Glory for me in the Endeavour Stakes on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.